The Galactic Council had always looked at Earth with a sense of superiority. To them, humanity was just another primitive species on a backwater planet, insignificant, easily conquerable, and in their minds, nothing special. The Council's spies had been monitoring Earth for centuries, watching human progress from the shadows. They observed the planet's technological development, its rise and fall of civilizations, and all the wars humans fought among themselves. Yet through all this, they saw nothing that truly threatened their power. The Council's decision was made. Earth would fall. The Galactic Empire had already decided to move forward with their invasion plans. Armed with fleets of advanced warships, devastating weapons, and the might of a technologically superior civilization, they were sure this would be a quick and easy conquest. Earth's natural resources, its vast oceans, and its untapped potential were too good to pass up. The aliens had already begun their preparations for the strike. But as the invasion fleet neared Earth, something strange happened. It wasn't noticed by everyone, but it didn't escape the eyes of one curious scout. His name was Shylar, and he was part of the Council's covered observation unit. His job was to study Earth from a distance, to gather information on human behavior and their weak points. However, Xalar's life was about to change when he witnessed something that made him question everything he thought he knew about humanity. Xalar had been assigned to monitor a dense forest on the outskirts of a small human settlement. It was quiet there, peaceful even. Humans didn't spend much time in these remote areas, preferring their cities and technology, and Xalar was used to the silence. His ship hovered above the treetops, invisible to human eyes thanks to its cloaking technology, and his sensors recorded every movement in the forest below. On this particular day, he saw a young man walking alone. He was tall, with dark hair, and wore simple clothes. His name was Jake, and Xalar had no reason to believe this human was anything extraordinary. He was simply another of Earth's countless inhabitants. However, as Jake walked deeper into the woods, something unusual caught Xalar's attention. Jake stopped in his tracks and looked at the trees around him. He spoke softly, his voice barely audible, but Xalar could still hear him through his advanced audio equipment. "It's safe now," Jake said, his words carrying a strange calmness. The trees around him swayed gently, as if responding to his presence. Then, something even more bizarre happened. A deer appeared from behind the trees, cautiously approaching Jake. Xalar blinked in disbelief. The deer was not running away, as it should have, but instead was walking closer, almost as if it was listening to Jake. The alien scout quickly adjusted his focus to better understand what was happening. The deer stopped in front of Jake, looking directly into his eyes. To Xalar's shock, Jake didn't seem surprised at all. He spoke again, his tone gentle and reassuring. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you," Jake whispered. To the alien scout's amazement, the deer lowered its head, almost as if it understood Jake's words. The deer moved closer, nuzzling Jake's hand as if in trust. Xalar's sensors went into overdrive as they recorded this impossible event. He had never seen anything like it. How could a human communicate with an animal this way? As Jake continued walking through the forest, more animals began to appear. A wolf, its fur sleek and dark, padded silently beside him. Then, a bird flew down from the sky, landing on his outstretched arm. The creatures surrounded him, all responding to his commands in ways that Xalar couldn't explain. The wolf didn't growl or run away as it would with any other human. It walked beside Jake like a loyal companion. The birds perched on nearby trees, watching Jake with calm eyes. Jake didn't seem to be commanding them, yet they acted as though they understood him. The scene was mesmerizing, and Xalar felt a growing sense of unease. What was happening? How was this human able to speak to the animals? The scout watched for hours, unable to tear himself away from the strange spectacle. It wasn't just one animal responding to Jake. It was all of them. The forest seemed to be alive with a sense of unity, as if Jake was the link that connected them all. At one point, a bear lumbered into the clearing, and Jake spoke to it, his voice calm and soothing. "You don't need to be afraid," Jake said softly, his eyes meeting the bear's gaze. The bear, large and intimidating, lowered its head in submission, as though it was listening to Jake's words. Zelar couldn't believe his eyes. This was not a simple case of animal taming. It was something far more profound. He had read about the possibility of humans communicating with animals, but he had always considered it a myth, an ancient legend. But this was real. Jake was not just talking to the animals. He was commanding them, guiding them, as if he shared a deep, instinctual connection with them. It was as though they trusted him completely. As Sailor's mind raced, a question burned through his thoughts. What was this? How was it possible for humans, a species the Galactic Council had written off as primitive and weak, to possess such a unique power? Was this something all humans were capable of, or was it something special about Jake? The scout knew this was no longer just a minor curiosity. It was something worth reporting to the Galactic Council. This could be the key to understanding just how dangerous humanity could be. Selar had to be careful, though. He couldn't risk revealing his presence. The Council would need to process this information without alerting Jake to the fact that they were watching. As Skylar began transmitting his findings back to the Council, he realized that Earth's conquest might not be as simple as they had thought. The humans, despite their lack of advanced technology, might possess something far more dangerous, an ancient, untapped power that could make them formidable opponents. Meanwhile, back in the forest, Jake continued his walk, his animal companions by his side. He felt a deep sense of peace, as though he was connected to something larger than himself. He had always known there was something special about his connection with animals, but he had never fully understood it. Now, in the heart of the forest, surrounded by creatures who trusted him, Jake felt the weight of his gift. Little did he know that high above in the sky, Sailor was watching him closely, and the eyes of the Galactic Council were now focused on Earth. The invaders had underestimated humanity before, and now they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The Galactic Council's plans had been set in motion, but something had changed. The humans were not the weak, insignificant creatures they had believed them to be. There was more to Earth than they realized, and soon they would discover that their greatest mistake was underestimating humanity's bond with the natural world. Back in the vast halls of the Galactic Council, the high-ranking officials were gathered in a grand chamber, their eyes focused on the enormous holographic display showing Earth below. It was a place of cold calculation, where decisions that shaped the fate of entire worlds were made with little regard for the lives they affected. The Galactic Empire had always believed that Earth was nothing more than a primitive backwater planet, its people easily subdued by superior technology and military force. For centuries, the Council had studied humanity's behavior, watching from afar, observing their wars, their struggles, their small victories. But the conclusion was always the same. Earth was weak, and its people were no match for the might of the Galactic Empire. The invasion plans were set into motion, their fleet already on its way, ready to claim Earth's resources and subjugate its inhabitants. Yet now, something had changed, something unexpected. Selar, the scout who had been monitoring Earth, had sent back a strange report, one that caused a ripple of uncertainty among the Council's members. They gathered around a central holographic table, each member holding their place in this crucial meeting. The air was thick with tension as they prepared to discuss the latest findings. As the holographic images flickered to life, showing Jake and his interaction with the animals, the entire chamber fell silent. Sailor's report had been precise. The scout had witnessed a human, Jake, speaking to animals in a way that defied all understanding. Not just one animal, Jake had communicated with a variety of creatures, from birds and deer to wolves and even a bear. Each animal had responded to his words, following his commands and acting with an almost unnatural loyalty. The first to speak was Supreme Counselor Mornak, a being of tall stature with piercing, glowing eyes. His voice, deep and resonant, echoed throughout the room. This cannot be real. Surely, this is just some primitive form of animal training. There must be an explanation. But how? Questioned Counselor Valara, a sharp-eyed alien who had always prided herself on her logical thinking. Taylor reports that these animals were responding to this human as though they understood him. This is beyond normal animal behavior. The question is, how? How does he communicate with them in such a way? Supreme Counselor Mornak frowned, his expression hardening. There is no possible way a mere human could communicate with animals like this. It must be some kind of trick, some anomaly. Perhaps this human has simply trained them, using methods we do not yet understand. I don't believe that is the case, said Counselor Nixar, the most experienced member of the council when it came to the biology of lesser species. He leaned forward, his bony fingers tapping the table. There is no mention in any of our records that humans have ever shown the ability to communicate with animals, let alone control them in this manner. We cannot dismiss this report as an anomaly. It is unprecedented. The hologram flickered, showing Jake once again walking through the forest with his animal companions, calmly issuing commands and receiving responses from them. The council watched in stunned silence, each member feeling an unsettling sense of unease creeping through them. How do you explain this, Mornak? Nixar continued. This human is not just training these animals, he is commanding them. The bond between them is not one of subjugation. It is as though they understand him on a deeper level. Mornak remained silent, deep in thought. He had never encountered anything like this in his long career with the Galactic Empire. As a leader, he had seen countless species with strange abilities, but nothing like this, nothing that could even remotely challenge the Empire's technological supremacy. This changes everything, Valara said slowly, her voice laced with concern. If this human has such a power, what does that mean for our plans? If humans can communicate with animals in this way, what other abilities might they possess that we are unaware of? The room fell into an uneasy silence as the weight of her words sank in. The council had never considered that Earth might possess any sort of hidden advantage. They had written off humanity as weak and incapable of much, aside from their rudimentary technologies. But now, they were forced to reconsider. Could this be a fluke? Mornak asked, trying to hold on to the idea that this might be an isolated incident. Perhaps it's just this one human who has such an ability. It may not be a widespread phenomenon. It is possible, Nixar agreed reluctantly, but we cannot take that risk. The fact remains that this human has the power to control creatures far more dangerous than any we've encountered before. We know that many of Earth's animals, though not technologically advanced, are capable of extraordinary feats of strength, speed, and endurance. Imagine what this human could do with that kind of power. He could organize an army of animals, attack us from every direction. Valara nodded. The creatures of Earth are diverse and resilient. With this ability, humans could be a much greater threat than we anticipated. It could even turn the tide in their favor if they fully harnessed this power. Mornak's eyes narrowed. He was a strategist by nature, and he hated feeling uncertain. The idea that Earth, a planet they had viewed as insignificant, could suddenly present a threat to their empire was unsettling. What do you propose, Nixar? Mornak asked. How should we respond? Nixar's eyes glowed with the cold light of calculation. We must assume this ability is not unique to this human. It is highly probable that other humans possess the same power, though perhaps not to the same degree. Our best option is to accelerate the invasion. We can't risk waiting to gather more intelligence. If humanity can control the animals in such a way, there may be other abilities we have yet to uncover. We need to strike swiftly, before this power becomes a threat. Mornak mulled over Nixar's words, then turned to Valara for her opinion. Do you agree? Valara hesitated. I understand the urgency, but I also believe we must be cautious. We are already at a disadvantage. If humanity can form alliances with the animals of their world, We could face unexpected resistance. Their tactics could be unpredictable. We could be walking into a trap. Mornak took a deep breath, his mind racing. The idea of a quick invasion was appealing, but the potential risks were enormous. There was no telling what other surprises Earth might hold. The Council's knowledge of the planet was limited, and they had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt in the past. They could not afford to make that mistake again. We will proceed with caution, Mornak decided finally. But we will also begin preparations for a larger offensive. We will send more forces to Earth, and we will test the humans' abilities. We will see if their power to communicate with animals is as widespread as this report suggests. The Council members nodded, each of them feeling the weight of the decision. They had never been more uncertain about an invasion, but they could not back down now. The resources of Earth were too valuable, and the power of the Galactic Empire was too great to ignore. They would crush humanity, if they could. As the meeting ended, the members of the Galactic Council left the chamber, their minds filled with the same unsettling thought. Earth was no longer the weak, unimportant planet they had once believed it to be. This strange power that humans wielded could very well be their downfall, or their salvation. And as the fleet continued its approach, the fate of Earth hung in the balance. The peaceful days of Earth were beginning to fade. For centuries, humans had lived on their planet, unaware of the vast universe that stretched beyond the stars. They had their conflicts, their battles, their progress, but all in all, they had been a small, isolated species, far from the notice of galactic empires. That was until the Galactic Council, with its vast power and technology, turned its eyes toward Earth. Jake had no idea that his simple ability to communicate with animals was about to change the fate of his planet. He had always felt a deep connection to the creatures of Earth, an unspoken understanding between him and the world around him. He had always been able to calm an agitated animal or ask for help from the wildlife of the forests near his home. It was a gift, something he had never fully understood, but now it was becoming clear that it was more than just a strange talent. It was a power. The first time Jake realized the true extent of his ability had been just a few weeks before. While walking through the forest one quiet evening, he had encountered a massive, fierce wolf. Most people would have run, or at least been frightened, but Jake felt no fear. He reached out with his mind, speaking softly to the animal. It was an odd feeling, as if he could reach into the wolf's thoughts and communicate without words. The wolf stopped, its piercing eyes locking with Jake's, and for a moment, there was complete understanding between them. Since that encounter, Jake had been practicing. He would venture deeper into the forest, surrounded by all kinds of creatures, from the smallest birds to larger, more dangerous animals. His mind would reach out, and slowly, he could hear their thoughts, feel their emotions, and even give them commands. It was as if he was speaking their language. But it wasn't just the words that mattered, it was the connection. He had kept this secret for a long time, unsure of what to make of it. But that was about to change. The invasion fleet of the Galactic Council was nearing, and the humans of Earth were completely unaware of the storm heading their way. The Earth's governments had been too busy with their own issues to notice the growing threat in the stars. No one had any idea that an alien empire was planning to destroy their world, or that the survival of humanity might depend on the unique bond that one man shared with the animals of the planet. Jake's life, however, was about to take an unexpected turn. The sudden invasion of Earth by the Galactic Council wasn't something the humans could have prepared for. They had no idea how to fight back against an empire so technologically advanced, so much more powerful than anything Earth had ever known. The human armies were quickly overwhelmed, their weapons and technologies unable to compete with the high-tech ships and weapons of the aliens. It was in the midst of this chaos that Jake made a decision. He knew that if Earth had any hope of surviving, it would need something unexpected. The humans couldn't rely on their outdated weapons and technology. They would need to use something that the Council couldn't have prepared for. Jake realized that the bond he had formed with the animals wasn't just a gift. It was a weapon, one that could turn the tide of the battle. As the first alien ships began to land, The humans were unprepared. Cities were burning and chaos spread across the globe. The invaders were swift and merciless, destroying entire cities with their advanced weapons. But Jake had a plan. He wasn't a soldier, and he didn't have the training to fight an alien army. But he had something more powerful: his connection with the animals. Jake's first move was to call upon the wolves that lived near his home. The animals responded quickly, as though they had been waiting for his call. They emerged from the forest, their powerful bodies moving with purpose. But Jake didn't stop there. He sent his mind out further, reaching into the farthest corners of the earth, calling on every animal that could hear him. He connected with bears, tigers, lions, even the smaller creatures like rats and birds. He was building an army, not of men, but of the creatures of the earth. The response was immediate. The animals, once wild and untamed, began to organize. They moved in perfect synchronization, as if Jake's thoughts were the commands they had always been waiting for. The wolves led the charge, their sharp teeth and claws ready to tear into the alien invaders. The bears roared as they swiped at the invaders' machines, smashing through the alien armor with raw power. Even the birds took flight, bombarding the ships with flocks of sharp-beaked creatures. But it wasn't just physical strength that Jake had tapped into. His bond with the animals allowed them to think together, strategize, and work as a unit. The intelligence of the animals was heightened by Jake's guidance, and they fought with purpose, coordinated in a way that was unimaginable to the invaders. The Galactic Council had underestimated the power of Earth's creatures. They had expected a planet full of defenseless humans, easily crushed under the weight of their technological superiority. But they had never expected that humanity's secret weapon wasn't technology, it was nature itself. Jake wasn't the only one who began to see the potential of the animals. Around the world, other humans began to realize that the animals were not only fighting with them, they were fighting for them. In every corner of the planet, from the jungles to the deserts, from the oceans to the mountains, animals were joining the battle. The invaders found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't understand. No matter how advanced their technology, they couldn't predict the behavior of the animals. No algorithm, no calculation, could account for the unpredictable nature of Earth's wildlife, especially when they were united under one human's command. It wasn't long before the humans began to rally around Jake's example. People who had never thought of animals as allies began to see them in a new light. They recognized the power that was now at their disposal. Farmers who had spent their lives working with livestock called upon their cattle and horses to charge into battle. Wildlife conservationists reached out to the endangered species they had once protected, bringing them into the fight. Even the smallest creatures, like ants and bees, played their part, overwhelming the alien invaders with sheer numbers and relentless determination. As Jake's influence spread, more and more humans realized they had a role to play in this fight. They had been living in a world dominated by technology, focused on building weapons and machines that could destroy. But now, they saw that the true power of Earth lay not in their tools, but in their connection to the natural world. The animals were not just part of the ecosystem. They were partners, allies, and a force to be reckoned with. The battle for Earth had begun in earnest, and though the Galactic Council had come to conquer, they were unprepared for what they faced. The power of the animals, the bond between Jake and the creatures of Earth, had awakened something in humanity. It was no longer a fight for survival. It was a fight to reclaim the planet, to protect what was theirs, and to show the invaders that Earth was not as weak as they had thought. The Earth had always been a peaceful place, its people content with their simple lives, unaware of the dangers lurking in the vastness of space. For centuries, humans had looked up at the stars, wondering what lay beyond. Little did they know that the Galactic Council was watching them from afar, planning their destruction. The arrival of the aliens was swift, sudden, and devastating. It began with an eerie silence, a stillness in the air that sent shivers down the spines of everyone who noticed. It was late at night when the first ships appeared in the sky. They came without warning, emerging from the darkness of space and hovering over the cities. The people of Earth had never seen anything like it before. Massive ships, like dark clouds in the sky, their sleek metallic bodies glistening under the light of the moon. They were the size of skyscrapers, each one carrying enough firepower to wipe out entire nations in a single strike. These were the ships of the Galactic Council, and they had come to conquer Earth. At first, the humans thought it was some kind of mistake. Perhaps it was a military exercise or a strange celestial event. But the moment the first shot was fired, they realized this was no drill. It was an invasion. The aliens didn't waste any time. Their ships unleashed devastating energy blasts that tore through the cities below, reducing skyscrapers to rubble in seconds. The ground shook with each explosion, and the sky was filled with smoke and dust. People ran for cover, panic spreading like wildfire. Sirens blared, and emergency broadcasts flooded the airwaves, warning people to stay indoors and prepare for the worst. But it was clear that nothing could prepare them for the might of the Galactic Council. The first wave of attacks was brutal. Alien forces, equipped with advanced weapons and high-tech armor, began to deploy on the ground. They emerged from their ships like an unstoppable wave, marching across the cities, their weapons raised and ready to strike. There was no negotiation, no demand for surrender. The Galactic Council had come to take Earth by force, and they showed no mercy. Military forces across the globe scrambled to respond. Armies that had spent years training for every possible scenario were thrown into chaos as they faced an enemy unlike anything they had ever seen. The human soldiers fought back bravely, but their weapons were no match for the alien technology. Bullets ricocheted off the alien shields, and missiles exploded harmlessly against their reinforced armor. The humans fought with everything they had, but it was clear they were outmatched. Jake watched the destruction unfold from his home. He had seen the reports, heard the screams of people trying to flee, but it was only when he saw the invasion with his own eyes that the full weight of the situation hit him. Earth was being torn apart, and the humans were losing. It was a nightmare come to life. But Jake wasn't the type to sit back and watch as his world crumbled. He had something the aliens didn't count on, his ability to communicate with the animals. And now, with Earth under attack, he was more determined than ever to use his gift to turn the tide. As the invasion raged on, Jake made his way to the forest. His heart raced as he ran through the trees, the sounds of explosions and gunfire echoing in the distance. He needed to reach the animals. He needed to unite them and prepare them for battle. Every moment counted. When Jake arrived at his usual spot in the woods, he closed his eyes and reached out with his mind. He could feel the pulse of life all around him, the rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, the quiet movements of animals hiding in the underbrush. He reached out to them, calling to them as he had done before, but now his message was different. It wasn't just a casual conversation. It was a call to arms. The animals needed to fight, for the fate of the world depended on it. One by one, the animals began to respond. A group of wolves emerged from the shadows, their eyes gleaming with understanding. They had been waiting for Jake's call. Following them, a herd of wild boars charged into the clearing, their sharp tusks gleaming in the dim light. From the treetops, a flock of ravens flew down, their wings beating in unison, ready to follow Jake's lead. And then, from the nearby river, a pod of dolphins appeared, making their way onto land, ready to fight. Jake's connection with the animals was growing stronger with each passing moment. It was as if the entire forest, the entire world, was awakening to the danger that threatened them. The animals weren't just responding to Jake's thoughts. They were responding to a primal instinct, a call to protect their home. Earth wasn't just a planet. It was their world, and they would fight to defend it. Jake turned his attention to the humans who had gathered in the woods. He could feel their fear and their uncertainty, but he also felt their resolve. The animals were ready, and so were the people. Together, they would fight back against the alien invaders. As the humans and animals gathered in the woods, preparing for battle, the aliens continued their assault. The Galactic Council's forces were relentless, sweeping through cities and military bases, leaving destruction in their wake. There seemed to be no end to the devastation. But Jake knew that this was only the beginning. The animals were ready, and they were not the only ones. Across the globe, humans were starting to realize that they had a chance to fight back. They couldn't rely on their military alone. They had to rely on each other, on the animals, on the power of the Earth itself. Communities began to organize, forming resistance groups and rallying their forces. Farmers, scientists, and everyday citizens joined the fight, bringing whatever resources they had to bear against the invaders. As night fell, the animals and humans prepared to strike. The wolves, their senses sharpened, would lead the charge, moving through the darkened streets like shadows. The ravens would provide aerial support, scouting the enemy and swooping in to attack from above. The boars would take on the alien foot soldiers, using their sheer strength to crush anything in their path. The dolphins, though not as numerous on land, would assist by creating diversions, drawing the invaders' attention away from key locations. The first counterattack came at dawn. As the Galactic Council's forces continued their march through a major city, the animals sprang into action. The wolves charged, their speed and agility catching the invaders off guard. The alien soldiers were not prepared for such a ferocious assault, and their advanced weapons couldn't stop the wolves from tearing through their ranks. The ravens swooped down from above, pecking at the alien soldiers, blinding them, and causing chaos. The boars trampled over the alien forces, their tusks skewering the invaders who were unlucky enough to be caught in their path. It was a surprise attack, and it worked. The Galactic Council's forces were thrown into disarray as they struggled to deal with the overwhelming onslaught of animals and humans fighting back. For the first time since the invasion began, the aliens were on the defensive. But the battle was far from over. The Galactic Council was powerful, and they would not surrender easily. The humans and animals had won a small victory, but the war was just beginning. Jake knew that this was only the first step. The invasion had begun, and now, humanity's survival would depend on their ability to unite, to fight as one, human and animal, together against the invaders. The Galactic Council had underestimated Earth, and now they would see just how wrong they were. The battle for Earth had only just begun, and the human resistance, though small, had already shown the aliens that they were not as helpless as the Galactic Council had thought. Jake and the animals had managed to surprise the invaders in a few key locations, and for the first time since the invasion started, there was a glimmer of hope. But the alien forces were still overwhelming, and the fight was far from over. The Galactic Council had underestimated Earth's resilience, and now they were starting to realize that their advanced technology could not easily crush this planet's spirit. But Jake knew that a few surprise victories wouldn't be enough to win the war. They needed a plan, a strategy, something that could truly turn the tide in their favor. It had been 3 days since the first wave of attacks, and the situation was becoming dire. The aliens had taken control of several major cities, and their troops were spreading across the globe. There was no place on Earth that was safe from their onslaught. However, Jake wasn't ready to give up. He had seen how much the animals could do when they worked together, and he believed that humanity could still fight back. He had been in constant communication with the animals, organizing them into groups for more strategic attacks. The wolves were fast and stealthy, able to infiltrate enemy positions without being detected. The ravens, with their sharp eyes, had proven invaluable for reconnaissance, spotting alien forces from miles away. The boars, with their incredible strength, would charge through enemy lines, breaking apart alien formations. And the dolphins, though few in number, had proven effective in creating diversions, drawing the enemy's attention away from more important targets. But Jake knew that the most important weapon they had was something the aliens had never anticipated: unity. Humans and animals working together, using their individual strengths to complement each other. It was a bond the aliens couldn't understand, and it was this bond that would give them the edge they needed to win. Jake met with the human resistance leaders in a hidden underground bunker. They had all seen the destruction, the chaos, and the pain the aliens had caused. Many of them had lost loved ones, and the weight of their losses weighed heavily on their hearts. But they were determined to fight, to protect their world, and to push the invaders off their land. They knew the odds were stacked against them, but they also knew that there was no other choice. Earth had to survive. "We need to hit them where it hurts," Jake said, standing in front of the gathered resistance leaders. "The aliens are strong, but they are not invincible. They rely too heavily on their technology, and they've never had to face something like this before. Us, together with the animals, we have a chance to turn the tide. But we need to hit their command centers, their supply lines. That's where we'll make the real impact." One of the leaders, a former military strategist named Sarah, nodded in agreement. "You're right. If we take out their communication and supply lines, we can cripple their forces. But we'll need to move fast, and we'll need all the help we can get." Jake's mind raced with possibilities. They had the animals on their side, and now they needed to leverage that strength. But there was one more thing. The animals had a connection with the Earth itself. They could sense things that humans couldn't, and if they could tap into that connection, maybe they could find a way to locate the alien command centers. Jake's ability to communicate with animals was key, but he needed to take it a step further. He called upon the wolves, the ravens, the boars, and the dolphins. This time, he didn't just ask for their help in battle. He asked them to tap into the pulse of the planet, to sense the energy of the Earth itself, and to guide them toward the alien strongholds. At first, nothing happened. Jake stood in the middle of the forest, closing his eyes, reaching out with his mind. He could feel the pulse of the Earth, the rhythm of life in the trees, the soil, the animals, but it was faint. It was as if the Earth itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. Then, slowly, Jake felt it. A whisper, faint but unmistakable. The animals were guiding him, showing him a path, a direction. It wasn't just a physical path. It was something deeper, something primal. It was as if the Earth itself was speaking to him, showing him the weak points in the alien forces. He opened his eyes, looking around at the gathered animals. "I think I've found it," he said, his voice steady with newfound confidence. "The Earth is showing us where they are. We need to move quickly before they realize what we're doing." The human resistance, along with the animals, set off toward their target, the alien command center. They knew that this would be their most dangerous mission yet. The aliens had fortified their positions, but Jake believed they could succeed. With the animals' help, they would be able to navigate through enemy lines undetected. The journey was tense. The resistance moved silently, with the wolves leading the way, their sharp senses alert for any signs of danger. The ravens flew overhead, scouting the area and providing real-time intelligence on enemy movements. The boars stayed close behind, ready to charge if needed. The dolphins, though not able to travel far from water, had helped by setting up diversions in other parts of the world, distracting the aliens and drawing their attention away from the Resistance's movements. As they neared the alien stronghold, the tension was palpable. The command center was heavily guarded, with alien soldiers patrolling the perimeter. But the humans and animals were ready. They had trained for this moment, and they knew that they could not fail. The first strike came from the wolves. They moved in silently, using their speed and agility to take out the outer guards without making a sound. The ravens swooped down next, using their sharp beaks to disarm and disable the alien soldiers. The element of surprise was on their side, and the aliens didn't stand a chance. As the humans moved in, they fought with everything they had. The boars charged through the alien defenses, smashing through barriers and breaking up enemy formations. The humans, armed with whatever weapons they could find, fought alongside the animals, using their strength and resolve to push forward. It was a fierce battle, but the tide had truly begun to turn. For the first time, the humans and animals were taking control. The Galactic Council's forces, though technologically superior, were beginning to falter. They had never faced a united front like this before, and it was clear that they weren't prepared for the might of the Earth's creatures, working in harmony with the humans. Jake stood at the heart of the battle, his mind connected to the animals, guiding them, coordinating their attacks. The command center was within reach, and he knew that once they took it, the aliens would be forced to retreat. The Resistance had won a significant victory, but they couldn't afford to stop now. They needed to finish what they had started. With a final, coordinated assault, they broke through the alien defenses and reached the command center. The Galactic Council's forces, now in disarray, attempted to regroup, but it was too late. The humans and animals had proven that they would not be easily defeated. The tide of the war had officially turned, and the Galactic Council's hold on Earth was slipping. The battle had raged for hours, but as the dust settled and the last of the alien forces retreated, Earth had won a decisive victory. Jake stood at the front of the battlefield, his body covered in dirt and sweat, his heart pounding in his chest. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and burning wreckage. His mind raced as he looked around, taking in the sight of the fallen invaders and the exhausted humans and animals who had fought alongside him. They had done it. They had fought back against an alien force far superior in technology, and they had won. But even as Jake stood victorious, a feeling of quiet sadness washed over him. He had seen the cost of the war, the destruction, the death, and the suffering. Many of his friends, both human and animal, had fallen in the battle. There was no denying that victory came at a price, and yet, despite all the pain and loss, there was a sense of pride in his heart. The Earth had survived. Humanity had survived. Jake looked over at the animals, who were resting nearby. The wolves, their fur matted with blood, lay down in the grass, their sharp eyes watching the surroundings. The ravens perched on nearby trees, their feathers ruffled but their spirits still high. The boars, though weary, stood proudly, their powerful bodies a symbol of strength. And even the dolphins, though far from the battle, had played a crucial role in the diversion tactics that had helped turn the tide in humanity's favor. They had all been instrumental in the victory, and Jake felt a deep sense of gratitude for them. He walked over to Sarah, the Resistance leader, who was sitting on a fallen log, her face grim but determined. She looked up as he approached, offering a small, weary smile. "We did it, Jake," she said, her voice tired but filled with pride. "We actually did it." Jake nodded, but his eyes were distant. "Yeah, but at what cost?" he murmured, his gaze drifting across the battlefield. The alien corpses were scattered across the ground, a stark reminder of the battle they had fought. Too many lives were lost today. We'll never forget them. Sarah's face softened with understanding. "No, we won't forget them. But we've shown the galaxy that Earth isn't to be underestimated. We've proven that humans and animals can work together, that we're not just some primitive species. We're stronger than anyone could have ever imagined." Jake glanced down at the ground, deep in thought. It's true. We've come so far in such a short time. But the question is, what now? What do we do after this victory? Sarah's expression turned serious. "Now we rebuild. We heal. We make sure that what happened here never happens again. And we send a message to the Galactic Council. Don't mess with Earth." Jake nodded, though a part of him felt uneasy. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. There was still much work to be done. The alien forces had been repelled, but Earth was left scared, both physically and emotionally. Many cities lay in ruins, and countless families had lost loved ones. The road to recovery would be long and difficult. But Jake knew that humanity was strong, stronger than the aliens had ever realized. They had stood up against an overwhelming force, and they had emerged victorious. It was a victory earned through blood, sweat, and the unwavering will to protect their home. And that was something that no alien empire could ever take away from them. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the battlefield, Jake sat down on a rock, looking out at the horizon. The sky was clear now, free from the threat of alien ships and warships. It was a beautiful sight, one that he had taken for granted before the invasion. He thought about everything that had happened, the invasion, the resistance, the animals, and how it had all come together in the end. He had learned so much during this fight. He had learned that humans were capable of far more than they realized. They were capable of working together, of overcoming impossible odds, and of finding strength in unity. And he had learned that the Earth, with all its creatures, had a power that was beyond anything the aliens could have imagined. He thought about the animals again, the wolves, the ravens, the boars, and the dolphins, and how they had stood by humanity's side. They weren't just beasts of the wild. They were allies, partners, friends. They had fought for the same cause, and in doing so, they had proven that the bond between humans and animals was stronger than any weapon the aliens could wield. Jake felt a deep sense of gratitude for them. Without their help, the victory would have been impossible. But it wasn't just their physical strength that had made the difference. It was their loyalty, their intelligence, and their willingness to fight for something greater than themselves. The victory had come at a cost, but it had also brought a new sense of hope. Earth was no longer a defenseless planet at the mercy of alien invaders. It was a world that had proven its strength and resilience. And it was a world that would never again be taken for granted. As Jake sat there, lost in thought, Sarah approached him once more. She sat down beside him, her face soft with exhaustion but filled with determination. "We'll rebuild," she said, her voice steady. "But we'll also be ready. We've shown the galaxy what we're capable of. And if they ever come back, we'll be ready to fight again." Jake looked over at her, his expression serious. "Yeah, we'll be ready. Together, we'll make sure that no one ever threatens Earth again." And as the stars began to twinkle in the sky above them, Jake knew that the fight for Earth was far from over. This victory was just the beginning. The Galactic Council had underestimated humanity, but they had learned their lesson the hard way. And the Earth would never be the same again. The victory had been hard-earned, but it was a victory nonetheless, and it was a victory that would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. As the night settled in, Jake stood up, looking around at the battlefield once more. The animals, the humans, and the land itself had all played their part. And now it was time to rebuild, to heal, and to honor those who had given everything for this victory. The Earth had faced its darkest hour, but it had survived. And with that survival came a new hope, a new beginning. The Galactic Council had learned a valuable lesson. Earth was not to be taken lightly. And no matter what came next, Jake knew that humanity and the Earth's creatures would face it together as one.